Hello, my name is Emily, and today I'm here to inform you of spinal meningitis and the two different types of spinal meningitis. Spinal meningitis is a topic that is very dear to my heart. When my son was 4 days old, he was diagnosed with spinal meningitis. This is a picture of him when he was at Brenner's Children's Hospital. Like I said, at 4 days old, he was diagnosed with spinal meningitis. When I heard that the doctors found that my child had spinal meningitis, I really didn't know what that meant. All I knew was what they told me was that it was a very serious disease and they would be admitting him to the hospital. It was going to be a pretty long stay, and what they did was they drew spinal fluid from his spine and found bacteria in it. That was really all that I knew. I'm a dental assistant, and we have some patients that have spinal meningitis, and all of the patients we have are vegetables. They are in a chair, and they just ride around in a chair all the time. They don't have any use of anything. They can't talk, they can't do anything normal like a normal child. And so when they told me that my son had spinal meningitis, I didn't know much about it, so I made it my personal goal to research and to find more about what spinal meningitis was and what it is. In doing so, I found that there are two different types of spinal meningitis. I knew that spinal meningitis was bad, but I did not know that there were two different types of spinal meningitis. I didn't know the severity of them. I just knew that it was bad. Now, I knew that he would potentially be facing this for the rest of his life, and like I said, that's why I wanted to know all that I knew. So I'm informing you this in hopes that if you or someone have these symptoms, that you know what you need to know about spinal meningitis and what you need to do to seek help. Fortunately for my son and my family, on the 4th day that he was there, they went down and the bacteria was gone. It was truly a miracle. My son was very sick. He was lethargic. He went 14 hours without eating. He stopped breathing. He was very, very sick, and my husband and I believe in God, and we had faith that God was going to heal him, and on the 4th day he did. The 5th day we were able to go home. So fortunately for my family, it was a different outcome than some people that are diagnosed with spinal meningitis. Now, I'm going to explain what spinal meningitis is first, and then I will go into the two different types. Spinal meningitis is an infection of the fluid and membranes that surround the brain and the spinal cord, which means there's bacteria that's floating around all in the brain and in the spinal cord, which are vital, nerves and blood vessels and all sorts of stuff that can become infected. Once the infection is in the cerebral spinal fluid, it spreads very rapidly. As I said, it's floating around the brain and the spinal cord. So it spreads very rapidly throughout the body. I mean, it gets into the brain, it affects several parts of the brain, it gets into the spinal cord, it affects all different kinds of parts of your body. Now, if it goes without treatment, or if it goes a long period of time without treatment, there are long-term illnesses, brain damage, and death that can occur. The symptoms of spinal meningitis are very vague. The symptoms of spinal meningitis can be symptoms of any other kind of illness or sickness. The main symptom in adults of spinal meningitis is a stiff neck or stiff back. That is the #1 main symptom. Others include sensitivity to light, dizziness, lightheadedness, fever, sweating, and the list goes on and on. There are several symptoms, as I said, that are indications of spinal meningitis, but are also indications for any other type of illness. In children, however, it's harder to detect, just because of the fact that children cannot really tell you, they're not good at telling you what's wrong and what's hurting them. It's hard for them to explain certain symptoms and certain things in certain ways that they're hurting. So it's a lot harder to detect in children. For my son, he wasn't running a fever or anything. He was 4 days old, so of course it's hard to have any symptoms, but the number one thing was he didn't eat for 14 hours, and we assumed it was dehydration, but it was really spinal meningitis. So, as I said before, the symptoms of this could be symptoms of other things as well, so it's very hard to detect and diagnose. Other symptoms in infants and children are aching back, a blank stare, lethargy, refusal to eat, and so on. So as I said, if they are very lethargic, or if they have a stiff neck, or have any indication of their back or anything hurting, then that's a sign of spinal meningitis. You now have an understanding of what spinal meningitis is. Now I'm going to explain the two different types of spinal meningitis. There are two types of meningitis, bacterial and viral. It takes 10 days to 2 weeks from the first sign of infection, or from the time that a person is infected, before the symptoms are noticed. So, it's a while before you even have symptoms. Once you have it, that's why it's so important to act fast, because you've already been this long with being infected with spinal meningitis. Now you've got to kind of know your symptoms and act fast and try to get the medical help that you need. Bacterial meningitis. Bacterial meningitis is caused by bacteria, most commonly in the environment, which is kind of scary because, you can go to the grocery store and, holding onto your shopping cart, or, anything, any exposure to any kind of bacteria could cause this. It's very rare. Spinal meningitis is very rare, but it is very, very, very powerful. It's a powerful disease, and it affects things pretty seriously because of where it is. Bacterial meningitis can be life-threatening. It also causes tissues around the brain to swell, which interferes with blood flow and can result in paralysis or even stroke. That is why most of the people who have spinal meningitis that are in wheelchairs or vegetables are because of result of a stroke, due to the bacteria that's floating around the brain and the swelling that it causes. Children's ages 1 month to 2 years are the most susceptible to getting this. Also, adults that have a weakened immune system or have any other underlying medical issues are more at a risk for getting spinal meningitis. Bacterial meningitis. Treatment includes antibiotics. They will, once they find out that it's meningitis, before they even figure out what type of meningitis you have, they automatically start with broad spectrum antibiotics, which are antibiotics that kill a broad spectrum of bacteria. What they'll do is then they'll wait for the bacteria that they have taken from your cerebrospinal fluid, and they will test it to see if what exactly the type of bacteria it is. From that point, they will then choose an antibiotic that is specific to the bacteria. Moving on to viral meningitis. Viral meningitis is still serious. It's the most common type of meningitis, but it also is the most treatable and has the best outcome. It mostly occurs in children. It's contracted through stool, saliva, and nasal secretions. So this is just like any other virus is contracted. It is very contagious, but it is only contagious through those things: stool, saliva and nasal secretion. So sneezing, kissing, those kinds of things. People in the medical field that are handling stool are more susceptible to getting this as well. Most patients infected with viral meningitis are treated with antibiotics and fully recover after 7 to 10 days. So it's a very optimal outcome. Spinal meningitis is a rare disease that infects approximately 1,500 Americans a year. 11% of the infected result in death. 20% of the cases suffer from long-term consequences such as brain damage, kidney disease, hearing loss, or limb amputation. Spinal meningitis is not to be taken lightly. If you or someone you know are having symptoms of meningitis, please seek medical help immediately. Thank you for your time, and I hope that I've been able to inform you of spinal meningitis and the different types that there are.